Hi, everyone. This is Amy Major. Welcome back to Spirit Rescue Talk. I have my co-host Cynthia Maroon and Gigi Breakville with us. We do have a really awesome guest with us, Jay Hill, which he has his own podcast. But just to give you a little bit of a background on Jay, he is with Encompass Media, which is formerly Studio Six Productions. He is a paranormal investigator as well as a psychic medium. He is focused on historical locations and people with those locations. He is hosting 3 different podcast shows right now, so I'm a little jealous about that. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his experiences and his stories. But we also have an open discussion today as well, which we were discussing before we got on the show. And one thing that gets brought up either repeatedly on our show or a lot of guests have a lot of questions about are their own personal hurdles and challenges that lower their vibrational frequency and what it can do to influence their energy as far as the spirit world or paranormal phenomenon that happen around them. And that happens actually quite a bit. What we also want to discuss is the recovery from that, different things that we've done personally or things that suggestions we've given our clients to help find their way out of that, the light at the end of the tunnel, as many people say, to be able to progress through those experiences and be able to find a much better, peaceful place to be in, especially when you're dealing with spiritual, paranormal, or any energetic matters, in fact. But before we begin the discussion, I'd love Jay to kind of give us a little bit of background on himself and tell us a little bit of information about him. Hi, Jay.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Excuse me. Yeah, um, I've known you for a little while now, and
Mhm.
we've always had great rapport together. And um, being on another episodes with you, and so I was more than pleased to be able to come on here and talk about some things. Um, I am a psychic medium. I have I was born with the gift. It didn't really flourish until I was, older in life, but I've always had experiences, growing up and seeing apparitions and, whatnot, and experiencing different energies and frequencies that I wasn't really aware of at the time. But as I got older, and a lot of the things that I went through growing up and just living, daily lives of, daily life and going through traumatic things and making bad choices and all that, and I've always said that they're all teachable and learnable moments, and which I have learned quite a bit. But when I finally got into, you know, where I wanted to go headlong into the paranormal and whatnot, Spirit basically had said to me, you're in the right area, but you need to kind of go further. And so I didn't quite understand what that meant until later on when I realized that, helping people spiritually and making sure that they had an outlet for themselves for other people that either were gift or were going through something paranormal or whatnot. And that was kind of like my whole motto is I just wanted to help people, and that they would, tell me their life story and I would listen to them. And but none of them wanted to date me, so I had that whole connection with these people, these kids in school. And so it's just kind of funny. Achievement. Three strikes you're out, so this is the last one. But uh yeah, I'm an emotional person. I kind of wear my emotions on my sleeve and this and that, but I have a big heart. And but getting back to the paranormal and all of that, I just it's always it's always been something that, not that I've followed, but the paranormal and spiritualism has always followed me. And when I would try to get away with it or get away from it, it would always come back a little bit harder every time. And so I had to realize that, the less I ran and the less I did things was trying to block out those energies or whatnot, it was just easier to accept. And so I have, in a lot of ways, I've accepted who I am and what I do. And just the way I communicate with people. I don't, people want to know who I am, and I'll tell them. I don't live in the proverbial closet anymore. I don't shy away from that because it was very difficult in the beginning when I was really trying to be genuine. People, would be very judgmental, and that's a hard thing to deal with, especially when you're growing up and you're, changing the way you view yourself to your genuine self. And, some people, I lost friends over it, and they thought I was a party animal, and I got away from that. So it kind of really spirit, I think, and the universe, I kind of really, really think that there's certain people in your lifetime that you have that come into your life, and then there's a lesson to be learned, or there's something there to be taught in that, and then they leave. And I've had that happen a couple different times, and you really like the person, you like hanging out with them, and then but it was just for a season, and it's kind of sad as it is, but it's true through that. And I don't think that they really realized that, but I did know that. And so yeah, but wanted to get into podcasting. I wanted to, you know, teach people or to instruct people on certain things of spiritualism, and especially the paranormal, and talk about some of those experiences. And because the paranormal still fascinates me, and so yeah, so I'm working on a new podcast right now called 32. And people in the spiritual world should know the significance of 32, and people can look it up. And it's just a real positive angelic connection of spirit, mind, and body, connected to the spiritual side of things, with frequencies and energies and emotion, all that, and including the paranormal. So when I was researching to start another new podcast, which I've had several, and I don't know why I just have this urge to create. When I thought of creating a new podcast, I have a good friend of mine, Elizabeth Merriquin, who's a very good medium and a very good friend of mine. I just felt led to start one with her, because I had done something with her a couple of years ago, and we, had a good time doing it, and that ended. And so recently we kind of reconnected, and I wanted to do something new. So when I was researching, trying to figure out what show is this going to be about, and the number 32 stuck in my head. And so when I looked it up, and I thought, okay, that's perfect. That's exactly where I'm at. This is who I want to be. This is what I'm doing, who I want to, experience about, and or relate the experiences with others with this. And it's just basically a big connection, so people can get connected to themselves and their spiritual side, and realize that there's more to life than just what we see in reality. And I really, I'm really, excited about this. I'm hoping to do the first episode this month. So, so yeah, so that's, and I'm just busy. I'm constantly, working on my podcast. I do a lot of video editing. I do intros and outros for people. I it wasn't something I really wanted to get into at first, but after a while, it just kind of became a natural thing for me. I love doing it, and so yeah. But I'm always busy, and and I will say that I just started a new job, and I'm working for uh, electric supply company, and it's a small company. It's a big company, but it's a small building. And everywhere that I've ever worked has had some type of spirit or energy there. Same with the same place every place I lived has had either a spirit or energy there, except for the one I live in now, which I'm glad, because I get a little peace. But yeah, the place that I work now, I had one of the gentlemen that was actually buried on the property, was standing behind me. And I asked one of the coworkers if they had experienced things, and I this was a new job, and and I didn't know what these people would think, but they all had experiences, and so I do believe that universe kind of puts you into places or offers doors to be opened for you to what fits your not only your personality but what fits your spiritual makeup, and yeah, if you're listening to the universe, if you're listening to spirit, and you're trusting that guidance and this and that, I think the universe will not only lay people in front of you to inspire you or to help you, but also wherever you may want to work at, where do you put your energy to, and I was standing there for that interview, and I was like, I don't know anything about electrical components, or I'm not an electrician or whatnot. But as I was standing there, Spirit said to me, "Do you realize where you are?" And I said, Not really." And Spirit says, You will be working for a company that offers light." And I'm like, I got it now. So, and that's why I knew that, when Spirit, I wasn't, anticipating on applying for that job, but it was time for a change. And Spirit just said, "Hey, I think this is a good fit." So I did, and I had, great interview, and I've been there a month, and I really like it, and I've had experiences already, and I've seen some things. They have these cameras on in the small warehouse they have. It's a small warehouse, and they have all the CCT cameras, and there's a big TV on the wall in one of the offices. And in the morning, like I'll get there like it's 6 and it's still dark, and I stand there and just kind of look at it because the lights aren't on yet. And a couple different times I've caught a shadow figure walk one aisle to the next. And I'm like, God, I wish I had that on camera. I wish I had that on my phone. But so yeah, there's been quite a few different experiences. I know who's there. I know what's there and this and that. And I enjoy it. I was there by myself today for 4 hours, and it was really, but I was doing some work. I heard people talking, and then I heard somebody walking down an aisle, or bumping into something. And it was like I could take that as, yeah, it could be anything, but spiritually, when I see it and I know what it is, then it kind of throws that whole optimistic, maybe it's something else out the window,
Mm,
so
Mhm.
so yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And
It's a good place. It's a good place
yeah.
to
Mhm.
new beginnings. It's
Hmm.
interesting because we're in a 9 year right now in numerology with 2025. And so many people are like, well, I have all these new beginnings happening this year. But I'm explaining to them, well, you had to have an ending in order for
Hmm.
the new beginning. As
Yep.
they go hand in hand, they're just different sides of the coin. So this year, I don't like to say endings. I like to say it's year of transition and change.
Right. And this year, I think it is a transition to change. I think it's kind of like a new beginning, because that's the way I've been feeling for the last few months. It's like I don't really feel stuck anymore. You know what I mean? I feel like the change, like I've walked through the door and I'm walking down the steps or up the steps. You know what I mean? And so yeah, it's just been a new different experiences and new positive experiences. And I've been working on affirmations every day, and that makes a big difference. And I say all my affirmations before I go to work, and say it enough, and different things has happened to me that are real positive, and it's just like, so this is how that feels. So I just, yeah, I feel like I'm in a good place.
Good. I know that many people say they feel stuck because you mentioned feeling stuck.
Hmm.
And I've worked with, hundreds of people that have said that they've been stuck. And what Spirit's always told me is you feel stuck until you refind your purpose.
Hmm.
Because when you feel stuck, it's just an indication your purpose is shifting. And maybe you just need that pause in between your one focus and purpose and another purpose. So that feeling of pause makes you feel very stuck, because the human soul needs to have purpose. It's their battery
Hmm.
life. It gives them meaning. And without that
Hmm.
purpose, they feel like, okay, I'm stuck, I'm depressed, nothing's moving forward. But then I feel like with a new shift in energy, once it's ready, once all the doors open up, they get propelled forward in that new purpose, and they have
Right.
that zest of life again.
Right. And then that is another thing too, is, I tell people that when they come to me and say, I'm depressed, or, I don't feel like I have a purpose and I don't know what I'm going to do. And Spirit said to me one time, you need to tell this person, if they have a heartbeat, they have a purpose.
Mm.
And so I tell people that all the time. If you have a heartbeat, you have a purpose, and you just have to discover what that is, and let your heart tell you, and guide you in that sense. And a lot of people don't realize that there is an actual small brain on the heart, so when they say that, the heart will guide you, and it's true, your brain guides you all the time. It's just your thought process and this and that. Your heart can do the same thing, and I truly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were going to discuss a lot of the like challenges that people have, and I think finding purpose might be one of those challenges
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people, because when they don't have that influencing them or giving them some motive to move forward in their life, they do feel that feeling of being stuck in a mud, not progressing forward. They feel like and that actually happened to me, unfortunately, years ago, when I was getting involved in rescue mediumship in the very beginning. And I was unfortunately going through a divorce, and I was getting ready to lose my apartment because I couldn't afford to live there anymore. I had something come over me, and at that time, I didn't recognize I was actually getting energetically attacked by spirit. I just thought it was my own emotions, but because I had spirit around me all the time, particularly earthbound, I didn't recognize their influence on me on an emotional way. I always thought I would sense them, but I didn't. I felt them in my own heart. And the way they influenced me was by making me feel like I didn't have purpose in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And they made me feel like I was just holding space. I was taking air away from other people. I had no reason to be here. I was just a waste of energy in this world. And all of this came rushing over me. And I think it was at that moment, like, well, I'm gonna have to go through a custody battle. I'm losing my home. I'm gonna be homeless for the second time in my life, losing my marriage. All these horrible things were happening to me, and I could think of nothing but just walking away from this world and taking my life and just wanting to be done with it. Because it's like and I recognized at that moment I needed something to anchor me into this world, to make me feel like I was useful, or
Mm-hmm.
I meant something, or I could do something productive in this world. Because without that, I felt completely hopeless. I felt like I was just taking space. There was
Mm-hmm.
no reason to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I remember laying there on the couch, and I was just thinking, well, all I have to do is do something stupid and I can just take my life, because my kids weren't with me, they were with their dad. And all of a sudden, this voice came down, and they said, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. You're going to get through this. And they said, and something in the long line of, your purpose is to love. Now, if you can love your children, if you can love your family, if you can love yourself, you can find other ways to have purpose in your life. But the main purpose of your existence is to love. And if you can do that, then you're not wasting space. If anything, you're making the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that moment, through that whisper that came over me, I just had this awakening come over and
Mm-hmm.
say, don't want to die. I really want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I love my children. How can I even think about leaving? It gave me just enough spark. And I say spark because we are energy. It gave me enough spark in my soul that made me feel like, okay, I am useful. I can make a difference in this world. And it meant a lot to me to be able to have that moment. And ever since, I've never even experienced anything close to that again. But I have experienced spirits with those emotions and those thoughts, and to think, that's why they don't move into the light sometimes, is because they have that indifference. They have that feeling of they have no purpose. Nobody loves them. They don't love anybody. They're just existing. They don't want to exist anymore. And I recognize how much it interfered with my own thought process and my own emotion. It was a really dark place to be because I was minutes away from taking my own life. Minutes.
Hmm.
Because I had nothing anchoring me into this life, nothing whatsoever. And it was just that one whisper that came through and just changed everything for me. So obviously I wasn't that close because it only took a whisper to change my mind. But
Right.
it was a really hard situation to be in. And I recognized that was just drawing more spirit into my environment that had the same mentality,
Hmm.
that had the same emotional response. And so it made things a lot harder when I was in that vibration and in that mindset. So I always try to find my purpose, not in what I can do, but in what I can do just by existing. Because
Hmm.
Spirit has also told me your role is to exist. That's it, nothing more. You're here to really exist. You are love because you are formed from love. So
Hmm.
when you exist, you actually hold love unconditionally, automatically. It isn't something you have to find, it is something you already are. So existing and learning to love your own existence can
Hmm.
really help get you out of that place of feeling like you don't matter, because everybody matters, because your own existence is a gift. And just by being here in the world, you are a gift to the world. Whether you're sitting on the couch for the rest of your life, your energy placement in this world is a gift, and it's here on purpose. And there's so many people out there go, well, I have no purpose. You do have purpose, whether you feel like you don't, or anything. Everybody has purpose. And so I think that was a really amazing experience I went through. It was very dark, but it taught me a lot. It
Right.
did.
And that in that sense too, when you talked about that, if you really sit down and after you came out of that darkness, I wonder how many other people have experienced that.
Mm.
I wonder how many people are going through that similar thing. People go through certain traumatic or dark moments like that that learned a lot from my dark times and this and that. What did I learn that I could pass on to somebody else? It's just it's I've had family members that have committed suicide. What could have been done differently, And so there's always different avenues that I think that there's no limits to what anybody can do spiritually. You are who you think you are. Never change the way you think, and you don't have to change who you are. And I truly believe that, and I know who I am, but it still begs the question of, what about all these other people? What do they have or what are they going through? How can you help them? So I'm always researching and trying to find out new ways. And I listen to spirit. Spirit tells me and guides me and said, I only do like some of those like the readings or things like that if I'm prompted to. If spirit says, yes, this is what you need to do, and that a whole other thing of if I don't see it, I don't say it. You know, I'm very low key when it comes to my gifts. I mean, I'm open about it, but I just some people can come on too strong about it, and then people get shied away. They kind of, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, but so I kind of tiptoe around it a little bit and kind of come in the back way to say, there's another way, there's another option. And then people are like, oh, so I'm always kind of thinking that way. So when you went through that, that's why I was wondering if that thought had came to your mind of what can I do that people won't go through the same thing I did, you know? And so it's just I'm just mindful of all that, you know. I'm a Gemini. What am I supposed to do?
So am
Yeah.
I. That's why it's fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I really do remind people, and as much as they don't sense it, there's spirit with them all the time.
Hmm.
And those whispers are with them all the time, leading them back to the light, leading them into a place of peace and hope. And it's unfortunate that our minds can create this cocoon where we're not able to penetrate through it and actually be receptive to all the help that's
Hmm.
around us in the spirit world, but also all the hope that's around us in the physical world too. I mean, think about how many times people walk by and they smile or they wave or they say something. But if we're in that cocoon of depression or that feeling of hopelessness, how receptive are we to it? Are we really opening ourselves up to be able to accept help when
Hmm.
it is there and standing by? What do you think, Cynthia?
Well, I was just thinking there's like a commonality between both of your stories in terms of your perception of overcoming challenges. Like Jay was saying, I tell people if you have a heartbeat, you have purpose. And you tell your story and you say, well, they just told me my just existing is unconditional love and there's purpose in that. So there's like a common thread.
Hmm.
Even though the stories are different, there's still a similar message.
Hmm.
Similarly to Amy, I went through a very difficult period where I had to transition out of a job. I worked in the field of addiction and recovery for over 20 years and felt it was absolutely my purpose. I was on point, loved it very much, fell in love with the whole aspect of recovery living. And then went through a separation, rehoming, like everything, just the perfect storm. And like Amy, there were opportunistic energies that just kind of swooped in because my frequency just went really low in the struggle. And my gifts were opening up, and it was just a hot mess. I was a hot mess for a while. But I'm a work in progress, and I'm really grateful actually to the skill set that I got working with people in recovery, because a lot of the principles about overcoming challenges are things that I cling to. And, I know that I saw you on a few podcasts, Jay, and I know that you spoke openly about changing your own lifestyle with alcohol and drugs, and that you had to overcome things as well. And just understanding the challenge of, overcoming, substance use on any level, if that's something you use for relief or whatever the story is, that's challenging enough on its own. Like that's enough of a challenge. You add spiritual stuff on top of it, and it's like it can be very difficult. And there's a very, very, very well-known psychic medium, writes books, oracle cards, training classes, all that kind of stuff. She tells her story as well in one of her books about being impacted by substance use and trauma, and then how that impacted her gifts, and how it kind of numbed everything out. And then when she got sober, she got into recovery, or made that lifestyle change, they were back open again, and then she continued to develop from there. And I'm wondering from you, like, you said you had these gifts since you were young. What did you experience? Like, you had said one time in a podcast, I think the way you put it was, you were running away from things. And so in doing that, and then finally you had some, like, a medical issue happen, and then now you had to deal with things. And I'm wondering, like, in dealing with those things, how did that change your spiritual relationship, and your abilities? And is there something that you gained from that experience that you still hold on to this day, that you could share with others that are listening, that might be like, maybe I could try that? You mentioned affirmations, and I think that's lovely. But stuff like that.
Well, thanks for the question. I really, when I had that moment after um my health scare and this and that, it really, the word that comes to mind is perspective. it really kind of gave me a little bit of a perspective of what have I been doing my whole life that I've been running away from. There's been times where I've had to repeat the same stupid choice over and over because I'm not dumb. I'm just a creature of habit. And especially when you have bad habits, they're hard to put down, you know.
Mhm.
And there's people that I've worked with in the past, and that have you know uh with addiction problems and this and that. But I always tell them to look within inside themselves to see what would they want to change. Do you really want to be stuck in this circle, this loop of, yeah, I'm going to be drinking all the time and this and that, and it's just I was there, but once I got out of it, it was just like I could never go back because I worked so hard to get where I'm at now. I've been through the ringer quite a few times, but a lot of it is at my own hands, you know. And a lot of people, don't realize it. They say, "Oh yeah, they can be, judgmental. It's not a disease. It's not whatever you think it is that you need to get yourself out of." And
Mhm.
people don't quite understand that, you know. So,
Well, I think the majority of people that go to these addictive habits are really just looking for a way to feel better.
mm,
And when you're telling somebody to stop doing something when it makes them feel better, of course, they're not going to want to stop that.
mm-hmm,
It raises the endorphins. It makes them feel a certain way that they cannot achieve without having these substances or even activities.
mm-hmm,
People become addictive to finding replacements, healthier replacements,
mm-hmm,
great suggestions, because if they can find that rush or that dopamine rush
mm-hmm,
in a different capacity, they're more likely to be able to let go of more of
mm-hmm,
these addictive that are abilities or addictive mindsets that they have that are going towards the things that are harmful to the body, which they already know
mm-hmm.
it's harmful to them.
Right,
You
right.
know that they already know what they're doing. So belittling someone or telling someone that they're doing something wrong isn't going to help the
No.
situation. Finding avenues for them to find ways to receive pleasure or happiness or some type of an enhanced situation that brings them out of this lesser than mentality or feeling of the wounding they're trying to escape from, while
Mm-hmm,
trying to heal the wounds at the same time, which we know sometimes a lifetime to
mm-hmm,
heal. What other substitutions can we bring in that can give them the comfort that they're really looking for? That's really that's what they're looking for, is the comfort. So I know that there's many people out there with addictions that are, and me being a medium, have many people come to me and say, does my addiction make me susceptible to energetic attack? Because many people are afraid of that, because when they do get into these addictive behaviors, it lowers their vibrational frequency, making them susceptible. And the answer is sometimes yes, but not always. So I don't want people feeling that they're, oh my gosh, I'm going to be attacked by spirits if I have an addictive substance here, or if I'm doing something that's an addictive behavior that may not be good for me. The spirit world is tricky, especially when it
mm-hmm,
comes to energies around you. There are many people that are highly protected no matter what they do. And then there are some people that aren't protected at all, even when they do absolutely everything perfect, and they still find that they're getting attacked by spirits. So I
right.
always have people kind of look inward to say, okay, first, what are my contracts? What am I really here to do? Because you may be the biggest saint on this planet, but you're still going to be attacked by lower level entities if you have a contract to work in that field. I had that
Right.
happen to me over and over again. All these people kept telling me there was something wrong with me and that I was evil, or I held
Mm-hmm,
old karma from old lifetimes that were bringing these spirits in, and none of it was true at all.
right.
You
That's a
don't have any,
classic too, by the way. Old
it's
karma. That
old
that
karma.
that is so. I have to laugh
Yeah.
every time I hear that.
And people have karma only because they choose to have karma. You don't have to bring karma in with you. That's a choice by the soul,
Mm-hmm.
by the way.
Yep.
And I think our consciousness is actually moving out of that. um, that old way of thinking that we have to bring our burdens with us and recover from them, whereas the souls are evolving a little bit more to recognize that those were lessons and not mistakes. So we don't carry that judgment and burden of judgment with us
Mhm.
through every lifetime, or at least getting a little bit closer, inching closer to that karma. But
Mhm.
with the lower frequency activities, such as sometimes addiction, it can also be just going and screaming and getting into fights and yelling at people. There's many different activities that can lower your vibrational frequency, making you susceptible to the lower realm.
Mhm.
And the lower realm is like thousands of different spirits, entities, and all forms of energies that are out there. And if you do these particular types of activities, they put you in it, the vibration puts you in a placement where you're able to be seen by these particular types of energies. But it's not always going to happen. You're not always going to be like, okay, I'm a victim now because they
Right.
can see. It doesn't always work that way.
Mhm.
And I do find the majority of people that do get attacked energetically isn't by an outside force, but rather their own energy attacking itself, trying to give some type of message or lesson to the soul that the soul hasn't recognized yet. So they don't actually see that it's coming from within, manifested from within, projected somewhere outside of them, trying to give them a message or a lesson that is waking them up to something that they're doing that's harmful or something they're holding that is harmful. Gigi, we haven't heard much from you yet. I know a lot of clients do come to you and regarding certain situations like their own inner demons or their own inner child wounding. How do you usually address people or help people with situations when they're coming to you and you can see they're being energetically compromised, but it's not something outside of them, rather something from within?
From within, right? And with the shamanic ways that I have been, taught the teachings, a lot of this energy, I mean, there's three types of things we do, we are guided to do, and one would be extraction work, soul retrieval, and power animal retrieval, but that's just the large umbrella. From there it goes anywhere. And it's amazing what can happen as the healer going into the spirit realms to help a client who um the energy's off. I have somebody who has contacted me about stopping smoking. I had a beautiful client. I worked a year with her. She was in a dark place. She smoked. It's certain. I mean, cigarettes are addictive. So, and by the time we had worked together, and she also had, I had to enlist another shaman to work with me on depossession. And this was weighing her down. This was, oh my gosh, I felt really, I could feel, her pain and everything. Um, she no longer smokes. Um, I embraced the fact that she has gifts, and told, basically guided her along the lines of, you have gifts, honor them. Because we are in a society that, yes, we're slowly opening up to the fact that people have abilities, but we have a heck of a lot of people out there that poo-poo it. And so I feel that this brings on also negative energy attacks. Wounding is a new term I'm learning from all of you. So I really appreciate hearing this. But mainly when I'm working with my clients, you can go deep into the spirit realms, and you can, there's a man who actually is building a map of the different realms that he visits, and it's huge. It's that's how I mean you can't count the number of realms out there and the lessons and the healings and the healing work and the spiritual allies that come forward to help with the healing, because we are the channelers, we are the hollow bone. As shamans, we are the hollow bone, and we follow what we are guided to do. I have the same thing happen with mediumship. I've got, even now, I have not been able to do any of any of the work I'm called to do yet. And I keep telling everybody, just give me some time. Just give me some time. Let me just get better. But I've got I've got all these spirits that are coming to me, and I hear them throughout the night talking to me, and I'm like, I can't do anything for you right now. And they too are the same thing. There might be an addiction in there. There might be something in there, which is why I do psychopomp work, which is the healing, and to help them move on into the light, healed. It gets rather deep, actually. I don't know if I'm making any sense with all this.
No, you are. You're making sense.
It's all good. I mean, we all have different ways of bringing in these healing modalities. And I don't think there's one way to do any of this. We have hundreds of ways to heal ourselves. And if we can use, every time we hear of a new one, add it to our list of tools that we can use, because with the billions of people on this planet, I don't know of one that doesn't carry some form of wounding or some form of burden or judgment or feeling of not being good enough. There's just, everybody carries something in this world. And I think we're supposed to tell you the truth. I think we're, at least for a short while on this planet, we're supposed to dip into it to remember, because with the dense vibration of the third dimension, it holds all the memory of the wounding connected to the planet. The planet has an auric field with all the memory attached to every situation that's ever happened on the planet. And every time we anchor back into third dimension, all of that wounding reawakens within all of us because of that tapping into the auric field. And so it's very difficult for us not to be in a wounded state at least one time in our lives, depending on how connected to the earth and the aura and the history of this planet. There are many people that become, what I say, detached from the earth. They feel more cosmic energy. They don't want to actually anchor into the full chakra system. They're more hovering above their body, trying to escape their lifetime by saying, I have to be here. I want to help, but I don't really want to be here. They don't really tap into the earth's vibrational layers as much as everybody else through the root chakra or star chakra that many of us do. So they don't get burdened by that. But what they do have is their chakra system becomes overly stimulated by what's going on energetically around them. So they do get influenced by the energy of other people. They take in the burdens of other people and the other energies that are around them. So they don't recognize they're going to get wounding one way or another. So might as well anchor into the earth and give us their healing power that they came to do in the first place, which I know a lot of star seeds that just don't want to do it, regardless how much I influence them. But I think burdens and wounding is just a part of the human experience. I do. But every time we can come up with techniques to get them through it and faster, the more they could be healers for other people.
Right.
I also look at past lives, because we go through, not everybody, but I mean, we have there is an ability to heal those past lives. And so if there is an addiction or there is harm that's coming through these past lives, there is a way to change it, to actually speak to your past lives. And I've actually had the experience of working with a really great shamanic teacher who brought forward 5 of my lives to where I was a victim. I was a victim. I was a healer. In each life, I was a healer. One, I was taken and enslaved but I was a healer in each life. And I was rejected for it. I was removed, I was rejected, I was not accepted, I was not allowed in. And part of this, became a really dire need for acceptance. And through the guidance of spirit, I was able to do ceremony and work with this to where there's an improvement. So I feel like there's so many things we can look at within ourselves that can help bring about some beautiful changes.
Yeah.
Bringing up
Yeah.
the past life situation, that's one suggestion that I give a lot of people when they're going through depression or anxiety, or they're in that suicidal state, because I do work with a lot of people preparing for suicide. They come to me because they feel they have attachments, but helping them through it when there is an attachment, but just this feeling of helplessness or victimization, or just feeling like they can't cope. One thing that I pull with past lives is I explain to them, everyone on this planet has had at least one, if not dozens of lives already as we exist here. And if we've already been through this before, which means you're strong enough to get through what you're going through. This isn't your first rodeo. You've been here many times, and every time you're here, you gain more skills, more strength, more courage, and more confidence to get through these situations. And just because you're going through them again doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means your soul's testing it to see, okay, how can I get through it this time? Maybe in a faster way, in a better way. Your soul is more capable of you than you recognize, being able to get through these hardships, and they need to find that power from within. They can receive it and reminders from spirit, but everything ultimately has to come from within themselves, within their heart, and within their own spirit. What do you think, Jay?
I agree 100%. I mean, we all have the ability and the power to take charge of our spirituality in that sense. It's in us. We signed up for it. When we came to Earth, we. I always tell people this story. It's like it's like going to the grocery store. Before you were, on Earth, it was like you walked up and down the aisle and said, I want this, this, this in my life because I have to experience that. The planet Earth is the hardest planet to live on, hands down.
Mhm.
And there's probably spirit saying, oh, no way. I'm not doing it. It really speaks volumes to people who and are able to excel in it, or to kind of help to grow, into them and whatnot. And, we have that ability in us. And it's just the fact that whatever you chose to do on this earth beforehand, and spiritual people, I know that my line goes way back, and I come from Levi tribe, and it's one of those things, and in a sense of um where I was kind of doubting, going, is this possible? And spirit said, yes, this is very possible. Now I've also prophetic dreams, and um telling me things. It's almost like I leave myself messages in my dreams from past lives, if that's the best way to describe it. But that's the way it feels like. I'm always somebody else. I am me, but I'm not me. You know what I mean? And so there's been other lives where I've died in my dreams where I haven't been myself. I was somebody else. And I've had that happen a couple, 2 or 3 times,
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, so the speaking of the spiritual, quest of, discovery, I think that a lot of it has to start with inside yourself, and you have to be able to allow that to open instead of listening to the naysayers of the physical world. You have to really just take a chance and look inside, surprise at what you discover.
It's a hard world, but guess what? There's a huge reward at the end of this, and that's our growth, our wisdom, and our ascension of souls. So it is absolutely imperative that we work together as a team. We are all one consciousness, technically, in spirit, and we separate our individual selves to go through individual journeys, but that doesn't mean we were all meant to do it alone. I mean, we're all here to help each other, and through podcasts like this, we can educate or help or guide or inspire people to go through these situations, but also know they're not alone and to reach out. And I do want to remind all of you to reach out to us if you are experiencing any hardships or anything that you say, I just don't know how to get through this, or I don't really want to talk to anybody that I really know. I'd really like just to get some advice from people who have gone through this before. And this is what we're here for. We're here to get you through it. And especially if you're having anything going on spiritually around you that might be influencing your emotions and your thoughts to make you feel like maybe this is worse than it really needs to be. And how can I clear these energies from me so I can get through this a little bit faster? But I think we had a really great discussion today. So many great things that came through. And I know, Cynthia, you had mentioned that we did have a couple of emails that came through.
Yeah, I wanted to focus on one. I wanted to bring up one of them just for discussion. And Jay, feel free to chime in with your take if you'd like to, say anything to this. So this viewer emailed us basically saying, enjoys the show, feels like it's a safe place for him to be able to talk about his experiences. And, says he's always felt spiritually protected, but also attacked. And said throughout his childhood, he's heard and felt things that he can't explain. He has a strong connection to animals, to humans, energetically. And as an infant, he experienced a near-death experience. And then also later on at a pool party, almost had a drowning. It was part of a drowning. And had night terrors and lower abdominal pain. And then went to a doctor. They couldn't explain what was going on with him. And then he felt like he was spiritually guided to wake up from these nightmares, and then was taught through concentration, breathing, and hand movements to remove what he calls black smoke, like from his abdomen. And so on and so forth. So he's saying, his question is like, did my near-death experience, open me up to these kind of things? Were these childhood attacks? Like, does that happen? And why do I feel energy like it's, being pushed at me? He jokingly ends, it says, am I a wizard? But which I thought was funny.
From what I'm reading this in the story, and the first thing that came to mind with me was he's always been that way. His near-death experience probably really maybe enhanced it a little bit, but he was born that way. The other thing is, the one thing that he's missing is his connection with the earth. Okay, his grounding is lacking something fierce. For him to be able to ground himself into the earth and proverbially plant himself in the earth like a plant or a tree, those things, it's almost like being in a cocoon. Okay, once he maintains that grasp of grounding, he won't experience any of that. Things will start to even out, and then he can focus on other things. But that is basically, from what I'm seeing, is that he needs to what Spirit says, that boy needs to plant himself, literally, because the fact that he's, and I actually work with that I noticed one of my coworkers is I call him an earth child, because that's what his main, I guess, frequency is the trees, the earth, and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So, and this person is the same way. That grounding will resolve a lot of the emotional issues he'll have. And yeah, it'll be totally it'll be like night and day. You know what I mean? So he's off kilter, he's off balance. And this part of this stuff that he's going through is because of the fact that he's like a ship on the sea where it's almost going to tip and then it goes the other way. And okay, he needs to be on solid ground basically to stop that. You know what I mean? And so, like I tell everybody, go outside your house, take your socks and shoes off, walk through the yard, take some deep breaths, hug a tree, put your hands on a tree. I mean, seriously, because then once you put your hands on a tree, a living tree, all that frequency and the energy will go into your cells in a nanosecond. Okay. That type of religious type, of acts of doing those things will also help people to clear their fog in the mind and help to understand a little bit of what they're experiencing. And I tell people, I'm like, go hug a tree. And they're like, you're crazy. And I'm like, back in the 60s, some of these people had a real, a real good thing going when they said, peace, love, and, have, hug trees. And, they called them tree huggers and this and that. That's not a bad thing. I'm sorry, but it's not. And yeah, I mean, it's just, there was one time that I touched and it was taken over by these invasive weeds. Okay. I touched the tree, it was starting to split. And the only thing that I could get from the tree was, we're okay. And it died like a week later. And it was like, there was nothing it was like too late. There was nothing I could do for that plant. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was like the living trees and all the plants, everything, the life that comes off of this earth are substance for people who are struggling. The earth can be your energy source. And people don't quite realize that. You don't just walk on grass without shoes for nothing. You know what I mean? You don't just sit next to, beautiful trees and admire them. You take in all that energy. As you can recognize it, you'll see the world in a whole different way. So, and I think that's what he needs to do.
Thank you. Gigi, do you have any suggestions for our viewer?
I agree with the grounding. That is vital. It's key. Boundary setting, again, energy boundary setting. And I also want to reassure him that I too, as a child, I mean, my abilities were apparent to my parents by the age of 3. And as a lot of you know, I had to hide it. But I too would have things show up in my room at night, and I would go get my mother and I'd say, there's something in my room. And she'd say, do you want me to come and sit with you? And I'd say, no, God will take care of me. And that's where I learned at a very young age to sleep with the covers over my head, because I felt I felt that the barrier of my covers prevented anything from touching me or coming near me. And I still do. I mean, I'm much more confident and I know what the heck I'm doing, but I still do it to this day. I will still do it. I can't stop doing it. It's just a reflective, it's my protection. It is my physical protection, is my blanket, which goes up around my head, and I have a breathing area.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I like that technique. Except me in my previous very last life, I died of SIDS, so I can't have blankets over my head without feeling like I'm suffocating. I can't do that. It sounds like a really great thing.
Yeah.
But the question that he had is multi-layered. It really is quite a bit. And I know he has the question of like, did I come into this world open, or did my near-death experience open me up? And it shouldn't matter. It really isn't, because every child that comes into this world comes in with a higher vibrational frequency, with a closer match to their higher consciousness. They haven't given themselves enough time to anchor into the third dimension as much, so they're hovering still in fourth, going down into third, and still kind of anchoring into their chakra system. So almost all children are coming in sensitive. That's for one.
Mm-hmm.
As they develop and age, they anchor more into the chakras. With his near-death experience, that kept that from actually happening, where he opened up his full chakra system in the near-death experience, and has kept him in that fourth dimensional frequency because of that. Because when they have the near-death experience, they don't always anchor back in all the way. And that's why they start opening up to the spirit world, because they're now hovering in the fourth dimension and in the third dimension. And that's why I think Jay brought up, and my spirit said he needs to ground, is because he's probably never grounded his consciousness into his body since that experience.
Yeah.
And grounding is really needed to be
Is
able
that for him? It's really important.
very important. It is.
I think he'll see a different world if he does that, you know.
He will, because I think, he's probably experienced life feeling different, feeling like he doesn't belong, doesn't feel connected to the rest of the world. And many spirit people that have those near-death experiences feel that detachment, like they see the world, but they don't exist in the world. They have that feeling of disconnection, which is probably what he's experiencing. So grounding is really going to anchor him back into the human experience more than he's had before. Now, he had asked about the nightmares. Having a near-death experience leaves a mark on the consciousness body, which could have a trauma mark. And when you have a trauma mark and you're in fourth dimension, it opens up your consciousness into a trauma vibrational frequency. It can sometimes allow the mind or the subconscious to go into that trauma again when it's in that lower consciousness position, when you're in the sleep mode. So I think the nightmares are just a response of the trauma he probably went through with the near-death experience. And then drowning again, he holds the energy of the trauma, which is sometimes creates a repetitive pattern of these things happening throughout their lifetime as well. So he's just been opened several times. So we have to really kind of ask him, where does he see himself in this world? What does he really want to achieve with what's happened? Because nothing happens to us without purpose, reason, or a higher mission, because our souls chose to go through that for a reason. There's no coincidences in anything that happens.
Nope.
So I would have him connect to his soul and find out what was the purpose of the near-death experience and what did the soul really want to achieve through it. But also find out what can he do to use this ability that he's now claimed for himself to make this world a better place. So absolutely the grounding, but look a little deeper inward to find out the whys. So.
And he can do that by meditating. He can do that by book reading, to, if he's struggling with communicating with his soul and getting that information.
Well, just a little hint, anyone that does want to connect in with their soul, it's really easy. It's if you want to do some research on the lower heart chakra, if you actually tap in and focus on your lower heart chakra, that's the doorway to the soul. You can actually have really great conversations with yourself through the lower heart chakra. So for them to do a little research on that. So thank you for the question. Any other questions or any other concerns?
That's what we're focusing on for today. And I think that actually kind of came into alignment because you had mentioned prior to that about people coming into this earth not wanting to fully ground themselves in their chakras. And then this question, you mentioned that again, being above. So I think it was on point.
Exactly. So Jay Hill, thank you so much for joining us as our guest co-host today.
It's been fun. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's kind of opened my mind a little bit more. I get to exercise a little bit of my gifts, and I feel good. So I want to thank all you wonderful ladies that I'm appreciating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think anyone who has any questions, don't forget, we have our email, which is Cynthia.
spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com.
Awesome. So send us our questions, your concerns. Also, you can post your comments down at the bottom. We will have a link if you would like to contact Jay for any reason, because he's such an awesome medium as well, to reach out to him for that. But we just want to thank all of you for joining us today. We can't wait to see you again.